Isn't that funny? Haven't been out of here at all, have we?
There.
Yes. This is one of mine.
Oh, thank you. Okay, this is March 29th.
What are you going to ask me and talk to me about before we get started?
Oh, just your background, your childhood.
What do you want all that? That doesn't have anything to do with Oklahoma.
Oh, information on what your husband did, being a missionary to the Indians.
Well,
And
what do you want to know about our work with the Indians? What do you want to know about that part?
well, we're going to use that.
Your main desire is about the Indians.
Yes, ma'am.
Why didn't you let me write it down instead of that? Then I can be sure it's correct. Because if you turn somebody loose on that thing, and I'll stutter and stammer and won't be able to make heads or tails of what I'm saying. Right.
Oh, I don't think so. What's your full name?
My full name?
Yeah.
Sarah Willingham Pierce.
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 Today's the 29th. March 30th, 1984.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is Joe Todd and James Brown, an interview with Sarah Pierce.
Are you talking to that thing now?
Where were you born?
Macon, Georgia. Well,
Now, when's your birthday?
May the 21st, and I was born in 1907.
1907.
Mhm.
Who is your father?
Benjamin Brooks Willingham. And he was never a notable man in the sense that other people are. He was a faithful Christian. His brother was executive secretary of the Foreign Mission Board, the Southern Baptist Convention, for many years. I could look it up, but I don't know how long, but that's not really pertinent to this.
Who is your mother?
Wilson Shelton Willingham. She grew up in Richmond, Virginia.
How long did you live in Macon?
Till I was 25. Well, my home was there till I was 25 years old. I came out here to the seminary, Southwestern Seminary. Are you taking me on that thing?
Not yet.
I'm suspicious of somebody, am I not? I came out to the seminary. I was at Southwestern for a couple of years, but as far as my home, it was in Macon until we were married when I was 25 years old.
Where is Southwest Seminary?
The Arbiter, man. Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary is one of the largest in the world. It's in Fort Worth, Texas.
Fort Worth, Texas. How come you went to school is it a school?
It's a tremendously large. Do you know anything about it?
Well, I know what it is. Joe's not Baptist, I don't think.
Well, evidently he's not. Or else he strayed from the fold. What are you?
I was raised Baptist,
And where did you wander off to?
Episcopalian.
Episcopalian is good folks. Got a mighty good friend who's Episcopalian. Different style, the two denominations are.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure one appeals much more to some than to others.
Mm-hmm.
I still stick by Baptist doctrine, so. Did your wife lead you astray?
No, ma'am.
Go ahead. Go on.
How come you went to school at Fort Worth?
Because it's such an excellent school, and I think my pastor got me a scholarship there. I went there to study religious education.
Mm-hmm. How long did you go to school there?
Well, I think I covered the 3-year course in 2 winters and 2 summers. I took Master of Religious Education. Now, all of this is not a bit pertinent to this thing.
How many students were going there when you were going?
Well, I don't know, but there are over 5,000 there now. I think I threw away the publication just the other day.
Who was head of the seminary when you were going?
Dr. Scarborough, Lee Scarborough.
What was he like? What kind of man was he?
I don't know. He was a wonderful, wonderful, very evangelistic man. I think maybe he was president of Southern Baptist Convention at one time. Maybe I could look it up in the book there, but I don't know whether you won't know. Do you want to know it?
That's okay. Did you live in the dorm there?
The women's dormitory.
What was your main course of study there?
Religious education courses.
Is it a postgraduate school? Is it postgraduate or is it?
Oh, yes, people get doctorates there.
I mean, do you take undergraduate work and graduate work there?
I'm sure there are courses there, Bible courses and all, from young men and women who do not have the educational background that I had. I was already a college graduate when I went. And then, so I got Master of Religious Education, and then but others, I guess my husband got Master of Theology. Maybe it was just a Bachelor of Theology. But they have several degrees, doctorate degrees there. Quite a few.
Where'd you meet your husband?
There. There. They say women, the joke is that girls go there not so much for the MRE, but for the MRS.
When'd y'all get married?
March the 11th, 1933. Now you're going to want to know about him, aren't you, after a little bit?
Yes, ma'am. Okay. Okay, okay. What was your first missionary? Where'd you go first after you were married?
Well, he went into a pastorate at Yale, Oklahoma. He had a student pastorate while he was in the seminary. But then he went on up to Yale, Oklahoma, and it was the Depression days. So, well, after I was graduated, I went on back home to Macon, and then when he finished and started the pastorate there in Yale while we were married, I think he went there in the fall probably, and we were not married in spring.
How long was he at Yale?
7 years, an excellent record for a young man just starting out in the ministry.
For sure.
An excellent record. And
What-
very much love there.
How big was Yale when you went there?
Oh, I guess you could find the population there and cut it off about 100 maybe, something like that generally. Yale was the birthplace of Jim Thorpe, the Choctaw athlete, you know. That didn't make any difference in those days. Why they didn't have his home fixed up on a historical place. Since then they have.
Was he living there when you were at Yale?
Oh no, he'd been gone a long time. Strictly his childhood home.
What was the name of the church at Yale?
First Baptist Church.
First
yeah.
Baptist? So you left there what year?
I think it was probably 1930. No, let me see, let's get the figures right. We were married in, now I said he was there 7 years. I suppose it lacked a little bit of exact seven because it seems to me we left in 1939. But you see, that comes pretty close to being 7 years.
Yeah, that's right. Where'd you go from Yale?
Well, we went back to Macon for a while. For a while he was without work. And then we came on back to Oklahoma City for a little while. And we were called to Wilburton, Oklahoma. And we came to Wilburton in January of 1940. We left in about June, or middle of 1943, and went to Luling, Texas. Wait a minute, I'm telling a story. Somewhere there where he was. No. Strike that about the Luling. We went from Wilburton to Putnam City Baptist Church.
What church were you at in Wilburton?
First Baptist.
First Baptist?
Mm-hmm. Let me just preview this. We left here in the middle of 1943. We came back here in January of 1950. And in those years between that, he was pastor of Putnam City Baptist Church in Oklahoma City. And then from there, we went to Luling, Texas. And I think we were in Luling, Texas only about 2.5 years. My husband said he simply could not take the heat down there. And so about that time, the Wilburton Church wanted us to come back here, which we did at a loss of salary. But that was all right, because the point is to do what God wants you to do. And I was going to tell you that. Anyway, his second pastorate here lasted until 1961. You see, that was about 11 years. And then with the preceding 3.5, he pastored this church for about 14 years.
Mm-hmm. While you were here in 1940 to 1943, did you all join in any organized work for the war effort?
Wait a minute, let me say this. I don't know what I was going to say. He was not pastor of First Baptist Church at Luling. He was pastor of Central Baptist Church. There had been a split in the two churches, and they were comparable in size and so on. They were both very lovely churches. Luling Church was especially gracious, has been all this time.
Okay.
Now, the organizer, I think some fellows were stationed maybe out here at the college, and we had the church to be open for them to visit with their wives and things like that. Of course, my husband considered the responsibility of being a chaplain. He did not feel that God led him in that direction. But he was very outspoken against our what would you call it, connection with Russia. And when he got up to Oklahoma City, somebody sicked the FBI on him and had an FBI agent checking on him there. I don't know how much you know about, well, I'll just digress to say that Putnam City is now probably the fastest growing church in Oklahoma City. But to a great degree, I guess, because the city is growing out in that direction, not to mention the fact that they have a very aggressive pastoring program, and they have built. Brother Pierce, when he was at in Yale, he got the church to, I think, start the Council Valley Mission, which has now become a Baptist church. When he was here during that first time, what all he did do while he was here the first time. Him. He was one of the 4 co-founders of Choctaw Baptist Assembly. He was one of the 4 trustees that secured individual loans from us 4 trustees, and he was the vice president of Choctaw Baptist Assembly. In other words, he had part in deciding upon that Choctaw site and paying for it and getting that started.
Mm-hmm.
And the brush off. Have you ever been to Choctaw? Different story. And when I'm sure it was when we came back, he led our church to put up the first permanent, really good building, don't you know? Up to that time, they had just been sort of a makeshift fast. But he led First Baptist to put up a good concrete building that sort of set the pace for the other churches.
Mm-hmm.
When we were in Putnam City, he led the church to form a mission in Bethany, a Nazarene town, which is practically the same as Oklahoma City. You know, but
Yes,
well, of course, a lot of the folks at the church didn't want that done because they thought that would detract from Putnam City, but it was done anyway, and it has become a nice, thriving church.
Mm-hmm.
So wherever he's gone, he's done an outstanding work.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it says led in I just happened to come across this the other day. Led in the organization of the Bethlehem, Oklahoma Baptist Mission and organization of it, and that led so that it became First Baptist Church of Bethlehem.
Mm-hmm. How come you left Wilburton in '43?
We received this call to Oklahoma City, to Putnam City.
Mm-hmm. How big was Wilburton? How big was Wilburton when you were here the first
I
time?
didn't take off that on. I don't know exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Chamber of Commerce could probably tell you if you care enough about it. It was, I suppose it wasn't quite as large as it is now. There were not the industries that they're here now. He led in the building of an educational building. I guess the first time we were here, was it then? I don't remember. No, I guess it was the second time when we came here. But that educational building was torn down after they had put up this new building, and it was just a wooden building. Those were hard time days.
Mm-hmm.
And his work with the students out here was quite outstanding. I guess it was the first time we were here. They didn't have BSU secretaries in those days. And he acted as that counselor for all the students out there. He would go out to the morning watch every morning at 7 o'clock. You don't find any of them doing that, I don't think. And then when we came back, he participated in buying the property and so on for the BSU that's out there now. It's a different building they built. And he was very much concerned about the Iranian students. And he would go out and visit them in their rooms. They came to the church. I guess maybe several times, there would be as many as 30 of them and attending, and of course they're Muslims. And I'd have them down to the house for meals and so on.
Did you have many converts from among the Iranians?
You don't have converts from among the Iranians on that short notice.
Mm-hmm.
You know, those people face even death if they leave that religion. But we trust that some seeds were planted and that God will bear fruit in God's good time.
Mm-hmm. What were your husband's duties among the Choctaws?
I think I'm going to give you some, as long as you got the rest of this, and you might well put it somewhere, historically, because you can see he really did a notable work.
Mhm.
Now that BSU Center was purchased in 1957, and he was a BSU secretary from 1950 to 1961. He was the last president of Robbers Cave past the Layman's Retreat that met out at Robbers Cave Park. And I don't think this would have to be included, especially in any record of it, but it was a Boy Scout property, and they wanted to discontinue Pastor's Layman's Retreat. So that's what caused them to buy the property over Mission, over Tallahassee. And he was the presiding officer for Mission Baptist Seminary, the first one. And then he became the secretary. I think it was 11 years or something like that. When we entered the work with the Indians, and they wanted, let me see that, I guess wanted to have their own assembly, because it says here secretary of the Comanche Indian Assembly from 1963 to 1981. And that's when he became too sick to he was missionary to the Choctaw Indians 1961 to 1982. Am I spending too much time on this?
No, ma'am.
Yes.
What would you and he do as a missionary to the Choctaws? What would you do?
I don't start a little bit about how we got into the Choctaw work.
Okay. Please.
His health made it imperative that he leave. I bet you're taking this down on that thing. Why don't you, as the saying is, tell the truth and shame the... The doctor told him he better leave the pastorate or he'd be a dead man. Well, he stayed with it for 5 more years and found the doctor was right. So he resigned the pastorate, but he firmly believed that a pastor should not linger on in a church after he had resigned there. He thought definitely the pastor should leave. So he turn it on if you want to. You already got some of it. You might as well get the rest.
Oh, it's on now.
Well, he didn't want to join the Calvary Church across town. That would seem too much like competition or something like that. And maybe a year before, I don't know how long, when they moved, when the college took the reservation, our church had to be moved from the reservation to some other property. Esau and Alice Wade bought this present Bowling Spring property, and they got the church moved over there. But I think the church needed about $100 for to get the building moved. So Brother Pierce and I had visited the revival meetings and this and that at the church. So the Wades came and asked if our church would assist in getting the, with $100. Mm-hmm. And Brother Pierce saw of that. So when we desired to unite with that church, Brother Pierce asked them if they thought the church would be willing for us to come. I believe by that time Brother Esau had died. Mm-hmm. And Alice said, well, yes, indeed, they'd be glad to have us. So we joined Bowling Spring Church.
And what year did this happen?
61.
61.
We joined Bowling Spring Church in their first Sunday of the month, their business meeting in March 1961.
Why is it called Boiling Springs?
It was organized, that church is, I make an estimate of 125 years old, because it wasn't about 10 years old, 10 years ago that they had the centennial celebration or something of that sort. The church was let me tell you a little bit more.
Okay.
About something else before we go to that. At the time we joined the church, it was meeting in the home of Alec and Sarah Scott out here south of Ludi. And I guess everybody who went was kin. There were only 3 active members of the church at that time. Alice Wade, Sarah Scott, and Lorene Scott, Sarah's daughter-in-law. The other members of the rather large family would congregate there on Sunday and have dinner together and, family fellowship and all like that. But for being active members of the church, and when they met in business meeting and made motions and this, that, and the other, there were only those 3. What was the pastor's name? How could I forget it? And I could tell you who it is. You must put that in, so don't let me forget to tell you.
Okay.
Brother Wallace. Wallace. W-A-L-L-A-C-E. And you know that name? You know Brother Wallace. He's active in the, well, he's an elder in there. But he come. So, Brother Pierce made it his first order of business after we joined the church to get the church building in such condition that it could be used for services, because big holes in the roof, I think a gaping hole in the north side of the building and so on. So that was the first thing that he did. And they did not, after we moved out there, they did not have services every Sunday. But we felt that it was that you weren't going to build up a church if you didn't have the building open every time it should be having services. So while Brother Pierce was away, I went over there and had services. Not too long after we joined the church, we visited Grace Martin, whom we had tried to enlist for First Baptist, but she wasn't Baptist. It wasn't interested in joining in with the hellos. But when we visited to come to Boiling Spring, why, she did. And she and I would, and maybe sometimes before she joined, I would just go out to Degnan and pick up Russell Scott's kids, 3 or 4 of them, we'd have Sunday school. We'd take them home. And you're not going to have a church to grow if you close the doors just constantly. Well, you want to get back to the beginning of Boiling Spring? It was first located out here near High Bridge. There's a Boiling Spring Cemetery out there and I think the Calverts, I've forgotten which Calvert, lives out there near it, and they could tell you where it is. It's up a little ways from the auxiliary, from a main auxiliary road, I guess you'd say. There's some graves there, some of them marked, and many of them that are not. And there's this little stream. It's dried up now, but gas came up through that stream, and it bubbled up so that it looked like it was boiling, and that's where it got its name. Some years later, I don't know when, nobody seems to know the dates on these, it moved across the road, and not too far, I think, from the highway maybe. And then from there, and I don't know the circumstances of that, it was moved out here to the reservation. Now I tell you, James, who can tell you all a whole lot about Bowling Springs in the early days and some Indian work, and that is Christie out here. He used to be a piano tuner. I suppose I could find his name, but be prepared to say even all we understand. Very interesting person. Very interesting. Okay, what next?
Okay. I'd like to get into some of the customs of the Choctaws.
Oh, wait a minute. Oh, okay. Now, why don't you ask him? He knows those.
No, the ones that you've seen.
But you asked me a question that I never answered. What his work was.
Right.
He soon found that the heart, you might say, of the Indian work at that time were these general meetings that meet on an average of once a month. There is the Sunday School Convention that meets every quarter on the first Sunday of each quarter, January, April, July, October. The another quarterly meeting and Brother Pierce found that he was going to have to be at those meetings if he was going to have any impact beyond the Bowling Spring Church. And of course, he was right. Then he met at those meetings for one solid year before he was ever even asked to lead in prayer. Well, he just sat back and listened, made himself agreeable, didn't try to push anything or do anything. He was wise in that because some other who have worked with the Indians have felt that they were going to come in with their superior white man's wisdom and lead in things. We tried to do a little of that in our own church, but discreetly and nothing to arouse any antagonism, I think. And after that, while they began to have confidence in him, you know, they asked him to come from week's Bible study, vacation Bible schools, revival meetings, and such as that. He would be there when the meeting began on Friday nights and did not leave until after the last service. If necessary, he would stay over until Monday morning so that he would be there to the very end, and the Indians appreciated that. Something else they appreciated, his effort to learn their language. Now, I don't know if he ever expected to be able to talk to them, but he knew lots of words so that he could sometimes get the drift of the conversation, you know. And I think he was about the only missionary who had ever tried to do that. Another distinctive thing he did, and James can tell you about that, was to look up about Peter Folsom. I doubt that the Indians as a whole, maybe in the main, practically none, appreciated any historical aspects of things. So they didn't appreciate what he did do, but it was a nice thing that he did do, and we won't take confidence in him.
How did he become interested in that? How did he become interested in Peter Folsom?
I don't know. He was a great man for files. And he may have seen something in the Indian Missionary. That's an early Baptist publication about Indian work. And maybe he saw the name there. But he just, when he came across something about him, he had put a little clipping in his file. When we got married, as I recall, he had a file, a box, maybe a yard long, wide enough to carry the folders. When he died, he had 4 or 5 drawer metal files full of things. I think he gave 2 of those files over to me.
Were you with him the day he found Peter Folsom's grave?
Yes, we went up there to look. He had been given some directions And we stopped at this filling station and asked how to get to that particular place, and the man wanted to know why. Brother Pierce told him. He said, well, that's not the way it is. I know the way it is. I mean, where he's buried. He's buried over there in that cow pasture. Said, I played around those graves plenty of times, and it seems to be an old family cemetery. Now,
Where's he buried?
where? Well, I can't tell you exactly. No need my taking time to try to tell you now, but it's up. It's not too far from New Hope Church, because there was a nice monument over the grave, but it could have gotten knocked down and ruined and everything like that. And so Brother Pierce wrote to all the members of the family that he could get knowledge of, and got permission to move the monument itself to the grounds of New Hope Church. And he can tell you about that. And he had a marker put at the original place. Now, you have that pamphlet about all that, don't you? And there's one thing that he regrets and I regret, that they put his, Brother Pierce's name so big on it. He didn't mean for it to be all of that big, but the man who cut it just made that mistake. He wasn't trying to take a lot of credit to it.
I'd like to get some information on some of the customs that you've witnessed to the Choctaws, like burial customs.
I don't think there's any appreciable difference between theirs and white. What do you think?
I've always been curious about the mourning. It seems that
Cries.
the crime.
I think there was more of that in the old days than now, because I do feel that some of the people felt that it was practically a duty to, when they entered the building, to weep, you know. It was honor to the person. I saw it happen at a white funeral not too long ago. I won't say that it was all put on by any means. But I would say that that's about the main difference that I know of. I guess it is. They always at the funeral sing 112. Do you know what I mean by that?
No, ma'am.
The Indians don't give the name of a song usually. Or hand me that little hymnal there. No, the little red hymnal. They know the name. If you say, let's sing 112, everybody knows what 112 is. If they say 48, they know what 48 is, what the words are, and the tune. Now, I think, pretty sure, that all the Christian hymns were introduced by missionaries. We wrote to Smithsonian Institute, or maybe the Library of Congress or something like that, to see if we could find any original Indian tunes, you know. And I don't know whether they sent us something, maybe they did a pamphlet, I don't know where it is, but they were all chants. You know, there's different styles of music writing. I don't know enough about music to know, but the English, the European style of music is based on the octave. In other types of music, where I think there's the five notes, and so on. So there was nothing of the octave style of music in the material that was sent me from wherever I wrote up north, all chants. So I think the Indians must have introduced the and added words to it.
Do you sing Choctaw, the Choctaw hymns?
A little bit. I can do better some Indians do.
I'm sure.
Now, what is 112? Okay.
It's about death, and I've tried so much, like I've written you, to have someone to write the gist of these verses. I've been after Gladys Wade and Maddie McFall. They're perfectly capable of doing it. I think the trouble is they think they have to make it in singable form. But Grace Martin gave me some idea from Nitakani Mafino Hose Aeli Hukma in that certain day when I die. And it's about death. Meditation on Death is the English title. Nitakani Mafino Si Aeli Hukma Anki Abba Benelimat Yisalan Larski. How'd it do it, James?
Very good.
Most of them are very sung very, very slowly. And 48, I think, is the only one that's not particular. You know 48. Well,
Well, sing 48 for us.
why don't you sing it with me?
Oh, no. That's good. I have about 8 of the translations. Yes, I'll have to get those in the mail to you
Well, nice.
next week.
Don't worry about it. My main concern is that they not be lost.
Mhm.
Meaning not be lost.
Betty Jacob has done a lot of work on it in Idabel, and George Stevenson wrote his dissertation on it.
Oh, well, that's all right. Okay,
So
then I won't pester them anymore. Now, they will sing, the Indians will now sing a lot of these to newer hymns. And they're not singing the old hymns like I used just then. What did they sing for 112 to now? Do you recall?
No. I know they sing 48 to several
Uh-huh.
that are not traditional.
Oh, that's a good word. 48.
Mhm.
Now this is prayer to the Holy Spirit. Shalomish means spirit, Holy Topa means holy, and Ma is sort of an explanation. Oh, Holy Spirit. Shalomish, Holy Topa Ma, Ish Mintim Pulacha, Ota Ilbashapi. I'm off. Yaham Ishpi Yopolashki. That's not the one that I had in mind.
You can sing Amazing Grace to it. What a
Oh,
prayer
no, I've got it up
Jesus.
here. I sort of gave that breath. Be holy Topamam Ich minti Puracham Atabilba Shapiahom Ich Pib Yopolaski. What's that other one about? Sinner, can you hate the Savior? Is that the one? That's not the one that's got a chorus. It's sung faster.
Just press along.
No,
No.
I don't know what I'm saying. Well, okay, well, I expect.
Are there any of the old songs that they sang along the trail that you've learned, that you've heard?
I know nothing about that.
Yeah.
They may have sung these.
Bertram Bobb says that they sang 112.
Well, they certainly would. They sure would have.
And it sounds feasible that they would have.
You see, before these, what are some of those other numbers, James? That they
When you
sing?
get past 21, 48, and 112,
You don't know the rest of them? Abba Pinky Toe,
Coast any chief.
I have to, some of them I have to read. Now, see, that's faster. Show me I took my car. And some of them they'll sing the chorus, one of them particularly the chorus in Choctaw, and then they'll, the stands in Choctaw, and then they'll add this verse, the chorus in English. What is that they do that with so much?
Oh, how I love Jesus, they do it.
Well, it's most. Okay. That's,
Ruth James has recently got the Choctaw words too, because he lives.
oh.
She sure does a pretty job singing it.
You were asking about other customs.
Well, have you been given any home remedies when they go out and gather the herbs and roots to make medicines?
No, I don't think that is much used now. I think I know I took Mrs. Wade to an Indian doctor down near Toka or someplace like that one time. But I don't know what was given her. And I have, now I don't know, James, you can censor this if you want to. You can edit it.
Okay.
But a very intelligent Indian friend of mine said that her sister went to an Indian doctor about pain in her knee. And Indian, I didn't see it all with this friend, I was telling him. And the Indian doctor did something, and said, that's what was bothering your knee. And I don't know what, some sort of loud crib, I've forgotten what it was.
He rubbed on her knee, like he was taking something out.
I think that, and drew it out. I don't think it could have been a small snake. I don't think that would have done, but anyway. And she asked me what I thought about it. And I said, well, I was hardly in position to know. I didn't want to hurt anybody.
That's the easy way out.
Right. What about Choctaw foods?
They like pie, cake, and the food is more or less like ours. About the only thing they use now is the, and I've almost forgotten the Tashalabona. You know them, what are they? And the balls, what are they?
Banaha.
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 Do you cook any Choctaw foods?
No. Now what is Tashalabona without, now that's with the pork, isn't it?
Yes.
What do they call it without the pork? Because the only difference in the two dishes is that one has a pork in it. It's dried corn, and it's just boiled. And those, I think, fry bread. Now, James can tell you about that more than I can. You ask if I cook them. No, because we always ate rice instead of corn. And James will pardon me, I don't care too much about
The banaha, it doesn't even look edible. That's my personal opinion.
What's banaha?
It's a cornmeal mixture, and they burn purple hull pea ashes to get the purple color, and they use maybe a teaspoonful of the mixture, and they make it into a ball with water, and they wrap it in corn shucks and boil it in water.
What does it taste like?
nothing.
It has no taste, really.
Yeah.
Most of the older Choctaws like to pour hot grease over it, and that probably gives it more taste than
But,
anything else.
It's just sort of a gummy deal.
Real bland.
Well, and it's gummy.
It is gummy.
What do the pea holes add to it?
I think color more than anything, maybe a bit of flavor.
I don't notice that I've even seen the color.
But I think it would be potassium.
Pea hole.
It has potassium. Is that good?
Well, that's good. I didn't know that because I have to take potassium.
Potassium is good.
Eat banana.
It's good for
Piece
the
it in.
nervous system.
Yeah.
Keeps your neurons firing.
I did not know until a couple
I
years
found
ago, I
that out.
guess, how important potassium is. It's
Oh, yeah.
such an important
Yeah.
part of our diet.
I'm not sure that this is a reason, but my grandmother mentioned when they traveled to churches that they always cooked this before they left because it would keep
Mm-hmm.
3 or 4 days. That could have
Oh.
been one of the reasons that they did this.
Do you know of any other special? Now, when they go to these meetings, it's a big deal to have the hog. That's the main thing. There's no need of my telling him all that. You know just as much about all of that as I do.
But you've been an eyewitness longer than I have.
Are you implying that I...
I didn't say that quite right.
What did they do with the hog? With the meeting?
It's the meat, you see. Now, the churches vie to have these general meetings. Why? Well, I think actually they like those general meetings as much for the fellowship and chance to go somewhere, and they'll probably be the best food that they'll have eaten in a month.
And they've come for miles.
Oh yes, they come from all over. Let's talk about singing, how they come from miles with the singings too. But well, the local church provides all the food. Well, all the food except for the annual association meeting and for the Sunday school convention. And the local churches send in a certain amount of money at their own, whatever they choose. And with that, the host church buys a hog or 2 or how many they feel they're going to need. And they butcher it there and have big, this is real old time, you know, the big iron kettles, and they cook that and boil it. Oh, the fat they fry, and they put the backbone and the bones in that, don't you see? And they use that in making the tonsil of bone. But tell them what those words mean. Tonsil of bone.
Tonsil is corn.
Corn, the bone.
I'm not sure.
Because that's not pork.
No, it's not.
Tonsil of bone. I wonder if they hauled that over from the French who up in this part of the country.
Possibly.
See, that was good corn. The good bona. No, bueno is Spanish. Well, anyway, am I wasting your thing now?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, turn it on now.
No, I guess as I take so much time and wander on and all like that, it's taking up a lot of your reel. Let me think now. Well, the fat is fried, and this lean is boiled, and the innards, the intestines, are carefully, very carefully cleaned and boiled too, right?
Right.
And many times the organs of an animal are very good. Liver, heart, and I suppose the same is true of the other. I may have eaten some of that. So they send out, by the way, I bet you don't have time, but they're having the Sunday School Convention down in Salome beginning tonight and tomorrow and Sunday.
I didn't know that.
That would be your chance to go and get a little first-hand taste of it.
Well, you can see so many Choctaws.
You'll have to go to that. Y'all too taken up with engagements that you couldn't do that?
Where is it?
Salome. You know where Salome is?
No, I'm not sure. Once you get out of that,
Huh?
once you get out of the Choctaw Station, I'm lost.
Oh. You know, my husband did a lot of work in the Choctaw Association. He's a real good friend.
What association?
Choctaw. There's two different Baptist associations. There's the Choctaw Association, which we're in, and Mrs. Pierce is with the Choctaw
Right.
Association.
Now, he can give you some history, I'm sure, about the division of those, it was an amicable division because the Choctaws, as they prefer to be called instead of Chickasaw, were located west of the Choctaw. See, Choctaw, southeastern Oklahoma. Choctaws, their next door neighbors to the west. And it made the territory so long, so far, that it was not a good way to have them all in one organization. And they have, as I said, a friendly split. And there were still some Choctaw Indians that were in the Choctaw territory. So the name Chickasaw was retained, Choctaw Chickasaw. But when the Choctaws organized their own, they just took the name. And they don't call themselves Chickasaw, they call themselves the Choctaw Association.
Did you ever eat any of the grape dumplings at the Choctaws?
Yes, they're real good,
You
aren't
like them? I ate some, probably, I think, at a Brown's, and they were sour, I thought.
This is just
What
a
bread
sugar in it, as you like.
It's called, I think, Bissawalakshi.
Well, I don't know. Well, that could be Chickasaw. Now, the two languages are close kin, but there is a difference, and they have words that Choctaws don't have. I think maybe the Choctaw is more fundamental because maybe the two were united enough to make that the ground, the fundamental one. And now that would be another Indian. And they use nuts, I'm sure. Where did they put that in?
Well, they use it for the corn a lot. You know, they'll put it in a cloth, and the extracts goes into the corn as it boils.
Didn't they use the meat of the nuts?
Well, possibly. Just at church, I've just watched them do it, and that's the way they do it.
I hadn't seen
What kind of nuts?
Hickory nuts, I believe, or walnuts.
that. Yeah, walnuts.
Possum grapes was, and that should be a question
Yeah.
for the Bissawalakshi.
By the way, if those things in your way, just move.
Oh, that's fine.
I think I know of no, well, I certainly don't know of any more democratic society than our Choctaw churches. Our Choctaw churches are totally democratic. We elect their officers. And of course, you know the Baptist churches, each one is separate. We don't have any overhead in connecting organization. But we have the business meeting, and the pastor moderator presides, and people bring up anything they want to and discuss it right there in the meeting and so on, and have their say. And that is the there's no delegation of some. They don't even use committees much, so I'm trying to do a little bit of that. But Grace Martin said that the Choctaw churches were the one things, or the Indian churches were the one place where they could control themselves entirely without any outside control. I think the Methodist churches have gone on in with the white Methodists. We have, Brother Pierce and I were, at the time we joined, we were the only white people. Later on, from time to time, there's some white person who has joined, but Brother Pierce and I made it our policy never to invite anybody to the church except Indians. If they wanted to invite somebody else, fine and dandy. But Brother Pierce said it would be better not to have the white people in the Indian churches because white people are more aggressive. They're more aggressive anywhere. They're more aggressive in Africa. They're more aggressive in China. The white people are an aggressive group. and he thought it would not be wise to have, but Wayne quoted him the other day. He didn't say who said it. He said, someone advised me that we ought not to try to enlist white people in our Indian churches. He said, but this is God's church, and anybody, any race, black, white, brown, green, red, purple, any of them. I knew who he was talking about. But now, you know, we've got a different generation, sort of. The newer generation has had more schooling, and they are able to do these little things red on this side. Maybe that just means it's on, I don't know. But they've had more schooling, they've had more contact with white methods and all, so, and maybe got caught a little of their white aggressiveness, so maybe they could hold their own better against whites than others.
The members at Bowling Springs are maybe the whole association eventually just thought of you and Brother Pierce as Choctaws, didn't they?
What'd you say?
Eventually all the Indians just thought of you and Brother Pierce as Choctaws, didn't they?
Brother Pierce tells of a time when he was sitting across the table from some man who was great on getting all this instructions from Oklahoma City office, you know, and things like that. Now, Brother Pierce, I forgot how long he had been with them. A long time, many years. And this man was sitting across the table at a meal, and I don't know what they were talking about, but the man said, all white people are liars. And he didn't back down or apologize or say anything.
That's interesting.
But there, on the part of many of the Indians, there's a great difference. Wayne, for instance, will say publicly, I used to just hate white people. I'd cross the street rather than meet one face to face. He said, but the Lord's changed all that. That doesn't do for a Christian. Have I ever talked you down?
No, ma'am.
My husband says I never quit. But if you want to know, you see, that's what I'm telling you.
Well,
Bowling Springs Church. I don't know if I heard this or read this, so maybe you can tell me. Did it start in Mississippi and maybe was when the Choctaws came?
Rock Creek, Cedar, and maybe a couple that are not in existence now.
What about Ephesus?
Ephesus. Well, possibly so. I don't know the ones that are now extinct.
But Bowling Springs is over 100 years old.
Because if Peter Folsom was the one who established it, why we get our date from Peter Folsom.
when was he? Who was Peter Folsom?
Well, he was a Baptist missionary, and he was also a district chief in the Spiro, Kyoto area.
Mm-hmm.
You have some extra copies of?
I'll give you a copy of some brochures that we have.
Brother Pierce, getting back to him, he taught all of the Bible except the book of Revelation. He said he didn't feel capable of tackling that. And he made outlines of every book as he taught it. He made an outline of every book in the Bible as he taught it. And type of mimeographic. And he gave him that.
Brother Pierce was born in China.
He was born in China. His parents were pioneer missionaries in Yangzhou. And I was reading the last days of his diary, the last things he wrote in it. He said, I wish I would have time to write up the life of my parents. And then I'm ready for the Lord to take me on. Well, he never did get to do it. And I thought I was going to do it, but I am going to do it, the Lord willing, but I'm not going to do it on the elaborate scale that I had thought it was.
Did you know his parents?
I knew his mother. His father was drowned when he was something like 14 years old, I think.
What did he... Just tell me some things about his parents in China, what they do.
Okay. That's a whole nother story, man. That's a whole nother story. His father grew up in Savoy, Texas, and taught school there, and felt a call to be a missionary. He went to Richmond, Virginia to be interviewed by the Foreign Mission Board of the Southern Baptist Convention, and one of the teachers in the church that he attended the Sunday he was there was Miss Nellie Mama. And so she was a volunteer for mission work in China. So naturally they were introduced to one another. And I don't know how much contact they had at that time, but anyway, they were assigned, both appointed, and were assigned to leave on the same boat that to China. So when after they had been over there for a while, I've forgotten how it is, and yet I've actually written that thing all out myself. But after they had been out there for a number of months, they were married and made their home in Yangzhou, China. And it was, for a long time, the Herbert and his sister was thinking that it was my uncle while he was secretary of the board. They put him on that same boat together because he had a reputation of being quite a matchmaker. But I believe they had already had the appointment over there before. And anyway, they were assigned to this Yangzhou field, which was virgin territory, you might say. Went up the Yangtze River and then up the Grand Canal a ways to Yangzhou. She started a girls' school, the first girls' school in all that section of China. And Father Pierce, I think, did evangelistic work. I think he established 20 more churches. He did a very notable work that has never been written up at all. And really, I ought to get that written up, if nothing but in a brief form, sent to the Foreign Mission Board.
How did he go about setting up the churches?
Father Pierce?
Yeah.
I guess he would go to a place, and he did much street preaching. And I guess some people were attracted to the gospel, and they would just start a small group, and the missionaries would visit them and help them develop to the point where they could start a church.
Was there much resistance to his preaching by the Chinese?
Well, during that term there was the Boxer Rebellion, which was a complete rebellion against any outside influences. His sister became, well, there were just the 3 children. His sister was the oldest, and then his brother Paul, and then Herbert. And his sister came to the States, studied to be a doctor, and went back to Yangzhou and was in charge of the women's ward of a very extensive Baptist hospital there. His brother was a doctor in Denison, Texas, until he was killed in a storm quite a number of years back, and he was a notable doctor, surgeon. And Herbert, we had thought we'd go to China together, but and you don't have to put all this down. I'll just tell it just to make this for the continuity of the account. Before we made our application to the board, but before you could be appointed, you had to have a physical examination. And when I had my examination in the St. Anthony's Hospital, I think it was in Oklahoma City, while I was running fever in the afternoon. Well, in those days, that meant you had 1 foot in the grave from tuberculosis. So I was put to rest for 6 months, and I fattened. I sure would have been good for killing another Choctaw back then. Well, we know now that that is a normal thing with some people, that afternoon rise in temperature. And since that was something like 9 years ago or something, why, you can see that I didn't have TB. Well, so evidently that was the Lord's leading to keep us in the States.
Mm-hmm. Did Father Pierce ever talk about the Boxer Rebellion?
I never knew him.
Oh,
I was going to tell you about that. He wanted a boat, a launch, for his mission work up and down the canal and on into the Yangtze River. And he commissioned a firm to build it, and all the family went down to Yangtze to get the boat. And on the return trip, there was a wash of water, a boat coming, and that boat capsized, and they all got out, but Father Pierce was not sure that didn't know that his wife was there. She was on one side and he was on the other, so he dived back in and going in to rescue her while he was drowned. Herbert dived in also, or something like that, but he managed to get So Herbert finished his such schooling as he could get that Shanghai American School, and then he came to Furman University, and from Furman University to Southwestern.
Mm-hmm. Did Mrs. Pierce ever talk about the Boxer Rebellion?
Well, I didn't know them too much, and I was too ignorant in those days to even know anything about those things.
Yeah.
But it's in their diaries. I think the Foreign Mission Board required all the missionaries to keep diaries.
Do you have their diaries? Do you have their diaries?
I have their diaries. And that was what I hoped to thoroughly go through, and ethics and all, in writing up this thing. But I can't do that. I wouldn't get through till 15 years after I died. So I do hope to make a passably adequate sketch. My husband was a diligent Bible student, as you can guess from what I said. He was very careful in his accounts. He was an excellent correspondent. He didn't wait for a long time to get his letters answered and things like that. Very meticulous, very concentrated person. And a good preacher. A lot of Bible in his teaching. He said if a sermon doesn't teach anything, it loses half its value.
Did your husband keep diaries?
Mm-hmm. His diaries are at OBU now, but he sent them up there when he sent his library. But I want them here. A while back I sort of felt the need of them. I don't know how much I'm going to be needing them, but anyway, I'm getting them back, and they can be returned to OBU in time. But I found a notation the other day among some papers that the Pierce's diaries ought to go to Richmond, Virginia for the Foreign Mission.
Yeah, the ones on his parents are going to Virginia?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Foreign Mission Board,
Mm-hmm.
Richmond, Virginia, and others.
Good.
One more little thing I might tell you about Indian custom at their meetings. When they send their messengers, And Sunday afternoon, I think the county is always a Saturday, why they'll take a vote on what church they'll go to next time. And the messengers from a church will say that our church would like to have you come and meet with us next time. There may be 1, 2, 3 competing for the privilege. And so afterward, well, they'll line up. All right, all who are in favor of going to Salona, be in this line, and all who want to go to Ardmore, here. All who want to go to one of the other churches, McAllister first, line up here. And so the messengers will line up, and they have 2 cabins, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's quite different from the white way of doing it, you know. They just hold up their hands or something like that.
What impresses you most?
Wait a minute, one thing. It is amazing, it's wonderful, the Bible, the understanding of the Bible that these Indian preachers have without any education. Some of them not even up to a high school education. Most of them, the old ones, not. But when it comes to understanding God's Word, in all, but you might say some wrong minor points, they have a wonderful understanding of it. Now you go see them.
What impresses you most about the Choctaws?
I don't know. You know, when something is no longer new to you, you don't notice. And after 120 years, well, it's no longer new to me. Well, their hospitality, for one thing. If someone comes and say, hello, we'd like to spend the night with you, come on in. And so they'll put them up for a night or 2 or 3 or 4 a week, right?
Right.
Good. And the love for children. You don't find a white boy, 15, 16 years old, walking around church ground with a little 2-year-old child or younger. Indian boy, he just thinks that's okay, right?
Right.
They love to sing. Like to sing. When we first were with the Indians, they had these all-night singings, and they were all night. And they'd get home maybe 5 o'clock Sunday morning. And if there's another singing, they'd go somewhere, another singing, but they wouldn't necessarily come to church. Preaching. And I think that's somewhat diminished. And so often they would be on Saturday night. And as far as Bowling Spring Church is concerned, when we started with our setting up our singing, dear Brother Pierce and I said, now, we don't want to have it on Saturday night where it'll interfere with the Sunday services. So we have ours on Friday, and we have reduced it to quarterly. They have their big annual singings, and they'll get someone from Tulsa, from Oklahoma City to come down and MC the program, and people will come from all over with their quartets and so on. And in a regular day, morning or night service, they'll say, does anybody have a special? And if someone wants to sing a special, or they want to have a quartet, why they'll say, all right, come on. And I'll confess that in many, many cases they're not too careful to practice ahead of time. We've got a nice bunch about quartet from our church. Just learn to sing together.
Did the Baker family, did they used to go to Bowling Spring Church?
Yes, and Then they joined Rock Creek when he was called as pastor. But he has a brother who would come down from Tulsa with his guitar, etc. And they would sing, have the guitar and singing until something like 9:30 or 10, and then they'll turn it over to Brother Baker to preach. Well, you know, you're not going to get far with the Lord's work that way. And this other brother was Pentecostally inclined, and the Bakers decided that that's what they wanted to do. Now, Brother Baker did a very right thing. They were having a business meeting and wanted to choose the messengers to the convention, Central Convention. And someone spoke up and said, well, I don't think we ought to choose messengers until we get our church united. We are pretty badly divided, and I think we ought to get it united. So I think we better pray about it. And they had a real season of prayer, an honest season of prayer. And when it was over, Brother Baker said, well, I believe it's right for me to leave the church. I'm not asking anyone to leave with me, but anyone who wants to may do so. And so all of his family, of course, and the Coleys all joined. I don't know, but some of those who went away with them came on back to the church, and the church thrived. It's done real well since then. But Brother Baker was very showed much integrity in his leading, and they're completely Pentecostal now. Have I talked you to death?
Oh, no, ma'am. I do want to ask one question. As a little girl, did you ever hear any Civil War stories in Georgia?
No, I don't think so. My father had a large family, and many of them settled in Macon. They were very prominent in the prominent old First Baptist Church there. And they said when Grandfather William and some of his sons moved to Macon, well, the Williams and the English Sparrows took Macon. There were so many of them. My father's brothers, most of them were quite successful in business. Quite. One of them even became a millionaire in the days when they weren't very many millionaires. But my father was not so like that. And that's the church I grew up in. Only at that time it was not painted white. It was stucco wood. This so they'd have gathering of the clan, and Aunt Lizzie's, Uncle Paul's, so all around, make around, you know, and cousin Carter's. And this is one of that's just one of the homes there in my hometown. But one of my uncles had a house quite as fine as that, but we didn't. Didn't make any difference. Maybe I wouldn't have gone to a row of pins if I had all that. My grandfather did have slaves, but I'm told that he said that when that if he didn't have them, didn't have the responsibility for them, he'd rather cut off his arm. And when he died, he was a very gracious, loving man. I'm so sorry I never did know him. I need to go into all the stories about him. But when he died, one of the neighbors, sent this huge, I think it was foliage and spray, you know, very fine, very handsome, very wonderful foliage by his casket. And some negress and a little bouquet of violets. And they put the two right together. White folks sure lost wasted a lot of ability when they didn't utilize Negro talent to the fullest. Now, I grew up with all the black prejudice of the Southern South. But thank the Lord, he straightened me out on that.
Do you have any more questions? Well, I think we have. This has been nice.
It sure has.
I've enjoyed this.
Well, thank you very much. I don't know how much good I've done you, but there it